Done. Oh, that's the main ones.
Okay. Sort of the Boyd family. Just for a second. That's why I'm not the techie person. Okay. Well, we'll introduce Ruth right now. Ruth has been researching her history for over 30 years, and like most of us, it is a passion for her. Taking this love of genealogy, she helps others find and share this passion. She offers various lectures and research services and is on the faculty at the National Institute for Genealogical Studies. Her education includes professional learning certificates in genealogical studies from the Institute in Canadian, Ireland, and England, as well as liberal studies and research technique diplomas from Sheridan College. Ruth is also a member of the Association of Professional Genealogists. Now I'd like to introduce to you Ruth. There you go. Just give me a minute to get hooked up here. There we go. So everybody can hear me fine? Good. Okay, so let's see. We ready to go with the clicker? Okay. So we're taking our Irish ancestors back over the pond. So we need to do all the work we can do here before we do that. And that's where some of us fall off because we think we've got it and we haven't quite. So you may need, whoops, there it goes. You need at least a county name, preferably a township or townland, parish name in Ireland before you can really start doing Irish research. Sometimes if you've got an unusual name, you can get away with a few things by finding out where you might locate that in Ireland, but if you've got the Irish Smith Murphy, you haven't a hope. Before you start researching in Ireland, you have to do it all here first. And it's not just the basics that some people think about. Be prepared. You may not find where in Ireland your ancestors came from. So some of the resources that we can use in Canada are census, civil registration, church land and probate records, as well as cemetery records, newspapers, and immigration records. But you mustn't forget things like family members, family stories, ephemera, local histories. Your collateral family lines can sometimes help you break through brick walls, local historical societies, libraries, and museums, and of course the FAN technique, which is friends, associates, and neighbors, so you research all of them. Now, this is what you usually get on a census record. So this is a census record for William Smith. He's living in Quebec. His place of birth is listed as Ireland or Ireland. That's what we all get. That's what we're, it's like, oh, you can't, this is what you want to get. So here you go. This is Daniel Smith. He's from Cavan, Ireland. Michael Smith from Cavan, Ireland. And Catherine Smith from Wexford, Ireland. There's another family below, and they're from Longford. There's another family above, and they're from Tipperary. I mean, I like this enumerator. This enumerator did their job. If only they could all have done it that way, but they didn't. Look at people in families found around your ancestor. Their name may not be similar, but it could be a sister married and her family came over with a brother. You need to think about these things. Note their names and places of birth and other information. You may not use it right away, but if you keep all this together in your file as you're researching, when you start to do your analysis and put things together, it could help you. If you find them on the 1871 Canada Census, see if you can find the land reference for where they're living. You'll find the land reference in Schedule 4. So this is a census record, and this is the across the top. So what you're going to get from this is it's District of Carleton, the number is 78. It's the Township of Fitzroy, and it's J3, that's the area. So there'll be J1 and 2 before, 3, and there may be several others after. It's page 22. The family we're looking for is on line 11. and the film is C10016. So you need this information to find your Schedule 4. Now, the good news is you can find it online at LAC or at the Archives of Ontario or a library that may hold the microfilm. So if you're online here, you need to go and you'll go through there's several pages. This is just the first page, but you'll find C10016 and you'll click on that. So it's Schedule 4. Return of cultivated lands of field products of plants and fruits. So you're going to get a bit more information as well by looking at this, of how what kind of things your ancestor may have farmed. You scroll through until you find District 78 G3. That's the nominal index. And you'll have to probably go through J4, J5, however many J's there are, until you get to the end. And this is, you'll know the end because they'll do the mortality, the death schedule. 1871 has the death schedule of people who died in the previous year. So after that, you'll get the other schedules and you'll want to look for schedule number 4. Now you need to remember that we're looking for page 22 and line 11. So here we are, page 22, line 11, lot and concession 2, concession 2, lot 30. Yay, we have an O. We want an O, because an O means owner. You don't want that. That's T. T means tenant. You won't find them on the land records, unfortunately. So we're going to start looking at some civil registration. This is what you're going to find. Death registration, just as Ireland. It's so exciting. And this is what you want to find. William Clegg, born in County Kevin, Ireland. Gives you a whole bunch of information. This death certificate actually was a collateral line. After I did cluster research, I found out this gentleman was part of a collateral line of the main ancestor for a client. And the client went back to Kevin and found the 1789 marriage of his ancestor. So, collateral research. A marriage registration, again, this is what you're going to find. Just born in Ireland. This is a widow, so you'll also have to think of other names. Hopefully they haven't. Sometimes with a widow, they will put a married name as for the last name of her parents, so you have to be careful with that. This is what you want to find. So this is Cookstown. It says Cookstown, Ireland, just there. That's where this lady was born. So that's great. We have a place in Ireland. We have Cookstown. There's one in Dublin, Down, Meath, Tyrone, Wexford, Wicklow, and Louth. There are no Crookstowns or Croxtowns in Ireland. It can only be Cookstown. But it's in quite a few counties. And it's not just in one little area. You've got some in the north, some in the south, some in the east. So where you've hit pay dirt, you still have a lot of work to do. Now, church records. This is the church record you get for a burial. And again, they've given us just Ireland. And then here's another burial, and we get Donegal, Ireland, which is great. So it's a place in Ireland. You have them on both records, both ways. Don't forget about the history of the church and the religious denomination of your family. When was the church first started in the area? When did the records begin to be kept? In 1925, the United Church of Canada was formed by Methodists, Congregationalists, and Presbyterians. Denominations, but not all of them. There were still Methodist, Congregational, and Presbyterian churches in Ontario. So when you're looking for these records, for Congregational, Methodist, and Presbyterian, also look at the United Church Archives, because there's a possibility that the records could be there. The church of choice may not be available in the area where your ancestors lived. Check other denominations to see if there's any marriage records, baptismal records, or burial records. Even Catholic people will be found in Protestant churches if there was not a Catholic church around. And again, not all church records survive, and some of them aren't like the early 1800s. They're more the mid to later 1800s. When contacting a local church, remember their first priority is their parishioners. And I always give a donation. Every time I go to a church to do research, I leave a donation. And I found if I have to go back to that church, they remember me and they welcome me. And it's also a thank you for their time because they don't have to do it. Find the archives for the denomination of your ancestors. It may be a diocese or a provincial entity. It may be found outside the area where you're researching, so consider that as well. And the number one rule of church records, patience. It's a virtue, right? You're going to find gaps. You're going to find poorly kept records. If your ancestors were in an area where a circuit rider went through, you may never find the records. But some circuit rider records do survive. Just sort of go out there and see what you can find, and then hope for the best. So we're going to start looking at land records because we found the land reference in the 1871 census or some other documents you may have. You may have it in a will. You can look at the abstract index for the land. This is an abstract index. And here you're going to find out when your people bought the land, whom they bought it from, as well as when was the land sold and to whom. The land was first sold here in 1846 from the Crown to the Canada Company. And in 1872, David Hovey and others sold the north half of the lot, or 100 acres, to Elizabeth McCaskey, the wife of Robert, in Tiny Township in Simcoe County. The interesting thing is they sold it for $1. This was family. You will find that land was often sold for $1 or $2 to another family member. I have a collateral line that came to Toronto, and he died in 1920, and just before he died, he sold his wife the house for $2 so that it was in her name. He has no will. That was his property. He took care of it. The other interesting thing is the names of the grantors. There's a long list of people. You can see. And the females have their husbands' names listed as well. You can find where they were living, and one female, there we are, one female was a spinster. Really hard to read, but that's the best copy you could get at that time. If you check the line below the bargain and sale, it says decree, and the date is the 23rd of August, 1871, and it was registered on the 12th of November, 1874, and the grantor is David Hovey et al. Plaintiff. It stated that the north half, 100 acres, whereby it is declared that the intestate in the pleadings mentioned was a trustee for defendant Elizabeth McCaskey, north half, 100 acres. This was a death. So there was a fight over the will and the land. So this is going to require a lot more research and figuring out the family dynamics and how the family tree actually works within this group, and see if more documents can be found, possibly court records. Now, one of my favorite record groups in the land records, and there's not many because I find land records extremely confusing, are township papers. I love township papers. I can go through them forever. They can provide more information for the family. Now, you need to look them up by lot and concession in the township and county you're looking for. They're done by lot and concession. That's the order in which they're done. You will not always find your ancestor's name in the township papers. Sometimes you'll find other people's name, and if you look at the abstract index, those other people are after your ancestor owned the land. So I always call township papers the garbage can of land records, because if they didn't know what to do with it, they put it in township papers. And this is one little ditty that was found in there. This is a letter written in 1824 by Miles Bacon in the town of York. In it, it tells you he's a retired trumpeter from the Royal Navy. He's a native of England. He's recently arrived in York with his wife and 2 children, and he's requesting a military land grant. Yes, yes, that gives us about a 2-week date, because he recently arrived. So let's say 2 months. 2 months could be recently. He recently arrived. So he wrote that in May. Let's say he arrived in March. How many people can get that close to when their ancestor arrived? But you know he arrived in 1824, because that's when he wrote the letter. You know he was a trumpeter in the Royal Navy. That means you're going to go and look at naval records. Further on in the township papers, there's a letter from a sergeant in the Army, and he was telling the people at the Land Record Office that a royal trumpeter would be considered a sergeant in the Army, so that's the kind of money he could get, or the amount of land he could get. They were trying to just determine what did a royal trumpeter do. And you know he came from England, and he had a wife and 2 children when he got here. Now, probate records. Whoops, there we go. Probate records. This is one page of a will, and they can provide some good information, even if it's a bachelor or a spinster. If you've got bachelors or spinsters, look for their wills. Here, Edward Burgess is leaving his estate to his 3 nephews, Samuel, Edward, and William Burgess. And the will goes on to provide the place of residences for the 3 men. And the same with spinsters. If they've got anything to be giving, it'll be handed out to nieces and nephews. Cemetery records. Cemetery transcriptions can provide a lot of information. So here you have one, Michael Kelly, born Braca in Tipperary. Michael Moylan is a native of County Tipperary, but it's erected by his brother Patrick. So you've got a lot of information just in those. These are the Ontario Genealogical Society transcripts that they did with the cemeteries. Sometimes you need to go to the cemetery to get information. Henry Robert Arnold is not buried with his wife in Old Oakville St. Mary's Cemetery. He's interred in Forest Hill Cemetery in England. No dates are given for him, and no place in England is provided. But if his wife was born in 1887, let's assume he was born around that time as well. Something tells me he was a soldier in the First World War. So I would go looking for First World War records for him. And then I would go to the National Burial Index for England and see if I can find him in there. Now you've got Elizabeth Moore, kind of hard to read there, but she's a native of County Antrim, and she was born in 1804, so that's fairly early. But then we go and look at her death registration. She's born in Scotland. This is the #1 rule. The person that knows the information is not there to tell them what's right and what's wrong. The person that filled out the death registration could be different to the one who arranged for the tombstone. The tombstone could have been put on much later. So things to think about. Now this is Patrick Tobin. He died the 21st of April, 1873 at the age of 79 years. He was a native of Kilkenny, parish of Kilmaganny in Ireland. Fantastic, that's what you want. That's exactly, I want Patrick Tobin in my tree. Now, his death registration actually says the exact same thing. So, wonderful. Newspapers. This is one of my favorite record groups for these. Now, what can you find in newspapers? Well, you can find the usual hatches, matches, and dispatches. And the obituary and funeral notices, they're really interesting to read. Social notices, you can find out who went traveling to see their sister. And my favorite, the police, court, and inquest reports. I always find a lot of great information in these. And news from surrounding villages. Sometimes if it's a little local paper, like I know in Oakville, they would have a section in the paper, so they would have something like Palermo's Pointers and Glenorchy's Gleanings and little things from the little villages within the township. So you would find out more stories that way. And information wanted ads. These are a little used resource. And of course, letters awaiting pickup at the post office. Think, most people in an area like this were farmers. They didn't get into town very much during the summer and spring, summer, fall months because, or even in winter because of the way it was hard to get there. But they didn't get into town much because they had to take care of the farm. They had livestock, they had their crops. So, but the newspapers would come around. People would sort of share the newspapers and they'd go around and they would put a list in the paper of letters that were waiting for people in the post office. You can get that in Toronto newspapers. So here we are. This one's some obituaries. These are transcripts. It's not an original copy, but they still have some good information. And this one provides the usual bit of native of Ireland. You know, you got a lot of information, but he's just a native of Ireland. Now, this one's from an actual newspaper. And it says he was one of the original pioneers of the area, which is good to know. He came from the north of Ireland. Okay, so you got a minimum 6 counties, maybe 8 to work with. Yeah, and a little bit more to go on, but not a whole lot. And you also know he was Presbyterian and a reformer in politics. That could be useful information. And here we have one that provides the county. Mr. Barber was from Antrim, and they say he came to Canada in 1822. His brother helped him erect the first paper mill. The names of his brother, wife, 3 sons, and 3 daughters are not provided. Now, this is an interesting one. These are both from Georgetown. It's a report about an accidental drowning of Samuel McKee. It provides the inquest verdict and that he had no relations in Canada. He was the last surviving child of his widowed mother in County Monaghan. It's a good start. The important note is the funeral was being held at the Orange Lodge, of which he was a member. So he was Protestant from the north of Ireland. If he belonged to the Orange Lodge here, he could have belonged to an Orange Lodge in County Monaghan. And the lodge records may still survive. You have to check locally to find out if they do. You could also search for the surname McKee in Griffith's valuations in the County of Monaghan to see where it might be located. Now, these are both from Georgetown. Do you notice that Samuel McKee was bathing in the water at the foot of Mr. Joseph Barber Dam? Could it be that Mr. Barber, who came to Canada in 1822 and started paper mill with his brother, was either Joseph or Joseph was his brother? Read surrounding articles, see what else you can find. Now, this is an information wanted ad. David Linnes, a native of Armagh, good start, and the parish of Sega. Yes. Okay. He's supposed to be in the United States, somewhere. It's a big somewhere. His brother and sister are looking for information, and you can contact Mr. William Graham in Albion. Okay, so his brother and sister may be in Canada. Possibly may not be able to read and write because is helping them out. If you find out more about Mr. Graham, it may help you find out more about the Linnes family. I mean, Mr. Graham could have been, they don't provide a title, so he may have been a minister in a church. He could have been the local lawyer, town clerk. He could have been a teacher. He could have been the shop owner who did the writing for people. Things to look at when you look at these records to find out more information. Emigration. This is a bit of a, excuse me, I have a cough. I went to Roots Tech and I came back with a cold. Still hasn't left me. Okay, so the 1901 Canada Census asked the question about the year of immigration, as well as birth date and place. They asked it. Doesn't mean it filled in. Okay, So here we have a person who arrived from Ireland in 1870, and the 1911 census asked the same question. So here's somebody else that arrived in 1870. You can see right there, it says 1870. And of course, sometimes the year of immigration was just left empty, which is extremely frustrating, but that's the way it goes. Now, remember with the year of immigration in the census records, the person may have said, oh, I arrived maybe 10 years ago. How old is Junior? We arrived just before he was born. It's a guide, it's not a fact. Okay? Especially if dad's filling it out. Are they going to remember the kids' ages? And we know ages are notorious in census records. Now, why is that not moving? There we go. Okay. Most passenger lists can be found for the early part of the 20th century. After 1935, they are private records. You can't access them. My granny died in 2008 at 99 3/4. I have to wait till she's been dead 20 years before I can get a copy of her passenger list. My granny's going to be 120 years old before I can get a copy of her passenger list. Most passenger lists can be found. Read the whole passenger list, as sometimes you may find notes saying no relations in Canada or where they're going in Canada, and it could be a relation. They usually give contact names and addresses for the next of kin in Ireland, too. So that's more useful information. There we go. Now, there are some early passenger lists available, not complete, very hard to read. Now, I'm not sure if this microfilm number still exists. I can't find it on the LEC website anymore, but I used it the last time I was there, so it's got to be there. A few of the volumes contain papers relating to government-assisted immigration experiments, such as the first and second Irish immigrations of 1823 to 1824 and 1824 to 1825. These include the correspondence and reports of agents such as Peter Robinson, estimates, abstracts of expenses, Treasury correspondence, Navy office, transport and victualling office accounts, government advertisements, and collections of letters written home by settlers describing their experience. So even if you can't find your ancestor in this, if you can find a letter of somebody that came around the same time describing how they were experiencing things, 9 times out of 10, your ancestor was experiencing the exact same thing. Now, of course, we can't talk about Irish immigration without talking about Grosse Ile. LEC has a searchable online database, and it's made up of several different record groups. So we're going to search for the Irish Smith, which is Murphy, #1 name in Ireland. Oh, it's interesting, on the last census, the language used to be, the languages spoken used to be English, Irish, and then in the last census, it went English, Polish, Irish. There's a lot more, there's people coming into Ireland instead of people leaving Ireland now. So it's changing. So the search results provide a name, a date, sometimes a ship, the origins, and it sometimes includes a county, the title of the database the information is found in, and if there's a digitized image. Ideally, you want a digitized image. When you click on the name, you're given more information about the person. And this one gives a bit more information because you've got the notes of the people that were the sponsors, the godparents at the baptism. But again, you don't get the digital image. So here's a result for Anne Murphy. And she's a person who died on board ship before arriving in Canada. And this is Arthur Murphy, who's found in the hospital registers in 1907. Remember, Grosse Ile did not close till the 1930s. This database has a list of Major Dennis Mann's sharecroppers. He was a landlord who paid for his tenants' passage to Canada. This information could lead you to estate records for Major Man and possible lists of his tenants and other information. Notice that this information comes from the Family Museum, Strokestown Park, County Roscommon, Ireland. They're in a joint project with Parks Canada to put these records together. So here we have a memorial for Alexander Murphy from the 13th of June, 1848. And this is the new LAC website page. I went through and I was updating all the pages because LHC's changed their look. And one thing I was sort of noticing is there was a lot more digital images the last time I was there. Now, this is what it used to look like. See right here, image 1? That's what you used to get. So we'll switch it around so you can read a little better. There you go. That's what you used to get with that entry. You don't get it anymore. So I don't know what happened, but as you know, we all want to find the original, not just an index reference. So what happens when you do these and then you need to go in and update them, sometimes things jump out at you. Now, LEC provides a list of other resources to help you research your Irish immigrant. Remember to check the sources of the databases, and if you can access the original, then please do so. Do not stop with just an index entry. I can't tell you how many people have contacted me trying to find out when their immigrant arrived in Canada, and I said, did you check the 1911-1901 census? Yes. I go in and look at the original record, and it gives me the year right there. They had just looked at the index. So, you know, go for the original record. The Colonial Office funds may provide more information. They are not indexed. You will have to go through all 59 microfilms. This is old-fashioned research, folks. It's suggested that you make sure you have a good chance of finding your ancestors in this record group. This is only available at Library Archives Canada in person. They now have immigrants to Canada before 1865. This used to have a different name, but now they've just given it immigrants before 1865. And it's supposed to incorporate some of these records from those 59 microfilms. Now it is searchable by name, so Murphy, and the results provide a name, age, if known, and year. So here we have Alicia Murphy. It gives you more information. Who came over with the Peter Robinson settlers? So you got a time period. Now I think there's a typo on this index reference because Ms. Peter Robinson, not Mr. Ms. Here's one for Daniel Murphy. He was included on a list of Roman Catholic families from Wexford and Carlow who were preparing to immigrate in the spring of 1818. Again, you have your microfilm number to check the original reference. And now here's one for Isaac Murphy. And he's from a group of Protestant families from Carlow and Wexford planning to immigrate in the spring of 1818. So they had two different groups from the same area coming. Remember to check your Irish ancestors leaving from England, arriving in the US and traveling to Canada, and then living somewhere else before they end up where you find them. So unfortunately, though, with most of the early records, you won't get border crossings from the US to Canada. Family members, a really good source of information. Talk to your parents if they're still around, grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins. I guarantee you somebody knows something that you don't, and they don't think it's important. And they're going to tell you, and oh, you know, by the way, and it's like, yes, that's what I've been looking for. So talk to your family members. What do they know about the family? Ask them open-ended questions rather than a yes-no answer kind of question. If you have pictures or family heirlooms, bring them along, spark a memory. Record the interview, notes digitally. Ask permission before you turn on a recorder. Some of them may not like it. That's fine. You're resorting to the old-fashioned notes, but it still works. Family stories. What are the stories that some other family members might know about the family arriving from Ireland? Write them down. Ask other family members what they know about the story. So you get the story from one person, then go to somebody else. I got this story. Do you know something about this? Remember the game telephone? And you'd start off with one thing and you get to the end of the line and they have something different. It's going to be the same. So write down all the different versions of the story. And research the general history about the story. So go in and look at the history. Maybe there's something happening in history at that time. And do the facts from history mesh with your family story? There is usually a small grain of truth in every family story. You just have to find out what that grain of truth is. Okay? And as I said, each member of the family will probably have a different version. And the closer they are to the person the story is about, the more wonderful the person will be. And that's okay, because that's what our memories are all about. Take all the puzzle pieces from all the versions. See what matches. Something may come up in one way here and then another way here, but in the middle is where you're going to find the actual story. Research your ancestors to find out what part of the stories are true. And then don't forget about ephemera. I think a lot of people forget about the ephemera that's hanging around everybody's houses. Search it out. I bet some people have boxes that were put in the basement when a house was cleared out and nobody's been through it. What's in those boxes? Ask other family members what they might have in their household. Traditionally, it was usually the youngest daughter that would get the family Bible. If you had somebody that was an only child, then they would have probably got the family Bible. I know in World War II, my great-grandmother's house was bombed when she was visiting my dad and his parents in Yorkshire. She lived in Glasgow, and it was flooded. My grandfather went there to sort of check on the house, get things going. There were 2 family Bibles from 2 different family lines. He ripped out the 2 front pages with the birth, marriages, and deaths and threw the Bibles away. I have the original pages. So look for things like that. I know my grandmother always thought he was crazy for keeping those pages. I love him dearly for it. Ask your family what they know about the objects. Again, it's a bit like telephone. Somebody heard one bit of a story, somebody heard about something else. Ask if you can take a picture, scan, or photocopy of what they have in their possession. I wouldn't ask if you can take it away, because a lot of people don't want to part with things, but ask if you can do that. Be careful how you ask for information and obtaining copies. There's going to be some family stories nobody wants to talk about. I know they're the best ones, but there's going to be some that nobody's going to want to talk about. I mean, I remember my grandmother talking about her grandfather and his first marriage, which produced 10 children. She said, well, it was either a divorce or death. We don't know what happened to her. I found out it was one of 17 divorces over 25 years in Scotland. So, and then he married his first cousin and had 9 other children, but that's a whole other story. People, as I said, are very protective of their heirlooms, so respect this. And if you're not allowed to take copies, then write down a description. Take a transcription of the document. Do something. Date it. Where were you? Name, address, postal code, everything. Could be complete. Make your source citation complete. Even if you're doing something like this, you need a source citation. I get phone calls about cousins giving birth to the next generation, and under the birth reference, I say phone call from cousin. That was what I have. Don't forget to make a note of where you got the information. Because I don't know about you, but in my early research, I go back and it's like I knew then what I know now. Local histories. A lot of people overlook local histories. Local histories can be a useful resource when no other documents survive for this time period. Now, you must remember, they're only as good as the memory of those providing the information. And don't we all embellish things a little bit sometimes? Especially if it's going to be this local history, it's going to be put in a book and we want things to be great. A local history may not provide information on your particular family, but it may provide information on other items. It could provide information on when churches were built in an area, the origins of the first settlers. How was the area settled? Was it Peter Robinson? Did people migrate from Quebec and then go settle in Kent County or something like that? Information on the first settlers and their descendants. It's possible you married into them. Your line married into them, so you could collaterally be connected to them. Large events that occurred in the area. Could your people have left Quebec because there was cholera epidemics 3 years in a row? That's a good reason. And don't forget about things like flood and drought, in particular if we've got farmers. So local historical societies, museums and libraries, these have got to be some of my favorite places. I love researching. Okay, see if you can find one in the area where your settlers, your family settled, okay? If they do not have an online presence, phone them. Give them a call. You'll probably leave a message because some of them could only be open 3 hours, 2 afternoons a week or something, Even if they have an online presence, don't solely rely on email. Because I've come across things where there's been an email address on the website, you send it, and it sometimes bounces, or you send it and you never hear, and then when you finally make contact with the society, oh, she died 10 years ago, we don't know, so keep trying. Items found in these repositories are usually donated, so don't expect a complete archive. Okay, and somebody in the repository may know of someone in the area with the same surname. It's possible a collateral line of your ancestors stayed behind. The other thing is keep going back, keep in contact with them, because new things are donated all the time. I was doing research on a local lady. She just took my fancy, and I spent 10 years of my life researching her. And I went back to the Historical Society on a regular basis, and I got known as the lady researching Lady Diana Taylor. So every time something new came in, they called me. That's what you want. Make friends with them. Be nice. A lot of libraries now have local history librarians. See if they can help you. They are a wealth of information about their locality, and they know the records within the library and other places outside of the library where you can find information. You can access them via Ask a Librarian. I love the Ask a Librarian email service. It's great. I've had wonderful responses from them. But they also now have online chat capabilities. So in real time, you can contact somebody and chat online and say, look, I'm trying to find this. Can you recommend something? Some of the smaller areas have limited opening hours for historical societies and libraries, so remember that. And see what local resources are available online. Slowly, they're starting to come online, very slowly in some cases, not at all in some, but still, even if if somebody's talking to me about traveling to Ireland and what could they do when they get there, one of the first things I say is go visit the library in the location where your ancestors settled. Talk to them. Contact them ahead of time. They might know somebody who knows the local history, and they could arrange for you to visit with them. You could find out more information that way. Oops, there we go, collateral lines. Research your collateral lines. You'll find a lot more information than you may think. If you don't know of any collateral lines in the area, then search for others with the same name. Do a cluster research for the surname. As I said earlier with the death record, that's how I broke through for a client in Ireland. I did cluster research over 7 townships and 3 counties, looking for that surname. And it took a while, but we broke through. Collect all the records relating to this name, everything. You're going to have a large collection. You could start putting it in a separate family tree database, or you could use Excel or Word or however you like to collect these things, binders, whatever works best for you. Transcribe, scribe, and analyze it to see how they could be connected to your family. What I found out with the William Clegg that I found, it turns out that the immigrant ancestor, his son, worked on the farm next door to William Clegg. I found him in the census records next door. And it actually turns out that was the family of his wife, too. He married into that family, farmer's daughter and all. But so, you know, look around, collateral lines, look all around. And searching surrounding townships and counties. It's easier if you've got a surname like Clegg. It wasn't that common, but if you've got Smith, it's going to be a lot more difficult, and you might want to start narrowing it down and then expanding with more information as you find it. And as I said, the fan research, friends, associates, neighbors in the area that you're researching. Most people didn't immigrate on their own. They immigrated as a small group, even just two couples or something from the same area. Some did come on their own, but usually you find that a couple from the same area would go together. If it was a single person, sometimes 2 single chaps from the same area left to go to North America themselves. That's what they used to call it in Ireland, America. And as I said, people in the same area in Ireland settled in the same area in Canada. You settle with people that know you, that you're familiar with, or you settle with people that know where you came from. And there's a familiarity with that as well. While searching the local cemetery records, you may discover a lot of people were from the same area of Ireland. So again, we saw those from Tipperary in the OGS cemetery transcriptions. Even if your ancestor's stone does not say where they are, it might give you a lead. You may find people with similar occupations in the same area, so you may want to research the occupation. There may have been intermarriage between the friends, associates, and neighbors before they arrived in Canada. Think of that possibility. Research all the available records, even those that seem most unlikely. And in general, follow up on your hunches, because your gut's going to tell you. You just know when you're looking at something. You know all the information you know about your family, and you're looking through these records, and you're thinking, no, this doesn't work. This does. Wait a minute, and you start to see a pattern. Follow your hunches. And don't forget to allow for serendipity. You know, if somebody says, oh, that book fell out of the library shelves right at my feet, and I opened it, and there was my ancestor. And, you know, all this sort of thing. I mean, I was researching at the Family History Library in Salt Lake last month, and I'm looking through some papers that relate to a 4-time great uncle. And in it, I find a name and an address of what looked like my 5-time great grandfather, writing a letter to him. Now I find out I can't go into Trinity College Library to look at it. I have to get somebody to do it for me. So now I'm on the lookout. Think outside the box. Get creative. We all have our methods and how we do things, but sometimes you have to expand it and just sort of think outside the box. Have fun with it. Keep track of all your research. Positive research, yes, but more importantly, keep track of your negative research. Okay, because you don't want to go back and start repeating the research again. And we've all done it. But if you keep track of your negative research, because usually with negative research, we go, oh, not there, done, next. But if you keep track of it, you'll know as you go through the records that, oh, I looked at this already. Okay, next. If you get stuck, start writing. I know we all leave it till all the research is done, and then we can actually write that big tome of our family history. And that's our main goal, but you know what? We never get to the writing part of it. And if you hit a brick wall, start writing. Because as you're writing, things are going to start coming to you, because you're going to include your footnotes, which are your sources. You're going to include all these things. You're going to write through, you're going to start describing your research processes and how you came to this conclusion and the records you looked at and what records had information and what didn't. And you're suddenly go, wait a minute, I didn't look here. Or, you know, I think I looked there, and go back and look at your notes and find, oh yes, look, I found that, but I did forgotten, or I found it before I knew what it was, because it often happens. And if you can't go back on your direct line straight, go collaterally. Like with the Clegg research, all we could find was a census record and a death record on his original immigrant ancestor. We couldn't find anything else. And by doing the cluster research and going collaterally, we were able to find his marriage in Ireland before 1800. So, I mean, that in itself is big. So if you're looking for me, that's my website for Blair Archival Research, and I'm the passionate genealogist. I write a blog. That was St. Patrick's Day. Don't ask me to pronounce the Irish, I'm not. And you can follow me on my Blair Archival Research Facebook page. I put up notes and everything. That's the 3-time great-grandfather, that was divorced. That's him on holiday. Under he's under his sou'wester jacket there, he's wearing a 3-piece suit with a vest and a bob and watch and everything. And she's got a long black Victorian taffeta dress, and she's knitting. And they're outside this ramshackled thatched cottage. He always went to Argyll for his summer holidays. So very interesting. But anyway, so keep trying. Follow me on Facebook, because I said I put up all sorts of tips, find new websites. If I find information on Irish research, I put it up there. And thank you for your attendance today. Does anybody have any questions? No? Oh, yes.
Sometimes if you research on ancestry, and then another time you research on Find My Past or My Heritage, or how does one get a better handle on who has got what records that are going to help you? I mean, you can search through and say, oh, there's no record of that person being born in the county where I thought. And then you can go look at another site, and they have a record.
Yes.
You know,
no, that you're going to have to cover them all. That's where libraries come in handy, because you can get ancestry at the libraries. My Heritage hasn't made it up here yet for the libraries. Find My Past are coming out with a library edition I think it's this year. They're coming out with a library edition. So right now, Find My Past is one of the better places for Irish records. They've got quite a variety, especially with their connections with Enniklin, which is the research company that was connected with Trinity College Dublin. And they do Enniklin do a lot of digitization of old books and things like that, as well as research. On Find My Past, they have things like the prison registers, which includes some photographs of people too. There's the website that's done by the Irish government, where they put up the index for the civil registration and then just as quickly took it down. We're hoping it's coming back this year. It's gone through government, it's gone through the Doyle, but we're sort of waiting for some final readings and things like that. So hopefully the index will come back soon. Northern Ireland have a wonderful online resource for civil registration. You can search the index records, and then you can you can search the index records for free, but you have to buy a bunch of credits first. Then you can search the indexes for free. But it's a minimal, like if you buy 10, it's a minimal thing. But if you want to look at the actual record, it will cost you 5 credits. And that's when it starts to get expensive. But you can order the birth, marriage, death record right there online through them. And I've done it, and it's wonderful, and it's fast. It's faster than the GRO in the UK. It's wonderful. I would hope that one day they will make it a little less expensive, but at the moment with the Canadian dollar tanking, that's kind of difficult. Makes research over there a little bit more expensive. So there's those coming up. But Ireland is a bit slow with some of the records. They're not as slow as Canada, but they're a bit slow. And I think they're trying to do things very carefully. So especially after the problem they had with the civil registration indexes. So things are coming slowly. I think they're beginning to realize that for genealogy tourism in Ireland, it's a good thing to put these things online. There's Roots Ireland, which have some church records and things like that. They're expensive to use, and they're transcriptions. They're not original records. And they're mostly from the county research centers that were put up around Ireland. As they were make-work projects in the 70s, I think. And so there's those records. You've got the Ulster Historical Foundation in the north of Ireland. They've got a fair amount. Again, it's pay-per-view subscription service. I mean, it costs money to digitize these records, so they have to recoup their costs somehow. And like I said, the Irish government website, irishgenealogy.ie, I think is the website. They will be putting more information up. National Library of Ireland has begun the digitization process of the Church or Roman Catholic Church records that they have on microfilm. They stop in the 1880s sometime. So they're going to be they're going to be digitizing all those microfilms, including the ones where you needed a bishop's request or bishop's approval to view the microfilm. Because they're historic records, they've got rid of that. So everything is going to be digitized for the Catholic records that they have on microfilm at the National Library of Ireland. Time, we don't know.
It's supposed to be some of this year, right?
Some this summer, but we still don't know. I mean, you know, we hear these things all the time, and then they say, oh, well, it's been delayed. I mean, that's what it is for almost every country, you know. So best laid plans. I think they're still trying to get the 1926 census released. Because that was the first census after 1911, and it was the first census of the Republic. So with home rule and things. So there's a little bit of difficulty there because they're doing privacy issues. Even though they released 1901 and 1911 in the 1960s, there were no privacy issues then. But things have changed. So, yeah.
I found the census, the family was a Presbyterian Church of Scotland. So would that be a small group from Ireland, that church, or?
You found them on the Canadian census?
Yeah, in 1861.
1861, and they were Church of Scotland. It could have been the church that was in the area. They could be Presbyterian, but Church of Scotland was what was there.
So going back to the roots, not necessarily Scottish or.
It might not be, but I wouldn't rule it out. I wouldn't rule it out because there wasn't a large group of denominations in each town as there might be now. So, you know, it was a long way to go sometimes to get married. They go to the local. Any other questions?
It's not
Christy?
a question, Ruth, but you had, just to add, the Ancestry and Find My Past, the library editions, the family history centers that are run by the LDS, they have access to both databases.
And I think MyHeritage as well.
Do they have that as well?
I think so.
And so if you go there, yeah, you can access them for free.
Oh, that'd be cool.
Yep.
So it's not the library edition, though, I guess, for Find My Past, right? Because
No, it'll just be Find My Past.
so you can get them.
Yeah. So that's okay. Yes, sir.
I've been doing a lot of drilling records at the local government library. Is there a time, is there a certain year that they are regulated to stop giving this information out to us? Or?
I'm sorry, this is for Catholic records?
Yes,
Joanne collection.
Oh, the Joanne collection. There's a certain year where they stop. They're not, I think sometimes it's hit and miss with those, whether you get stuff or not. Some records are really great in some areas and some aren't. Are they regulated?
Yeah, say like, court government, if you want to find, you mentioned it was the 1935 cutoff in one of the records.
Oh, that was the passenger lists. Yeah, that was the passenger lists. Records after 1935 are not available to the public.
But I think he's asking, does the Durand collection have a time limit like that as well?
Yeah, there is an ending year on the Durand collection. I can't remember what it is though. They tell you on Ancestry, in the title of the record, they will give you the year spans. Okay. Anybody else?
Just a comment about
Yeah.
hunches and going back. And 4 years ago, I came across a record in the library, and I said, yes, I'd be looking for phrase, and I wrote it down, and then the notice came up, the library's closing, and I couldn't go back for a while. I went back, I could never find it again. That was 4 years ago.
Yeah.
And I found it again. I found it again last week, and it was very simple. What I was looking for was this person arriving in Boston, his age and the date and the name of the ship. I had all that information.
Mm-hmm.
May the 19th, 1883, Boston on SS Canada. I looked up SS Canada ships. There was no ships there. There was nothing arriving in Boston. I couldn't find it again. And then last week, I just had a bit of time into Ancestry, tried it again, couldn't find it, but I was searching for Boston. And this time I just put in his name arriving anywhere in that year, and all of a sudden it popped up.
Yeah.
Arriving in New York. Hang on though, destined for Boston.
Oh, that's
Destination Boston.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes less is more when you're putting information into the database indexes.
Yeah.
The less information you put in, sometimes the better the results you get.
Yeah. Yes. But the only thing was, I searched all kinds of ships records, and there was no SS Canada. There were two SS Canadas. One was junked in 1876, and the other wasn't built in 1901. So how was my one there? And it shows up in 1880 and 1883, but that's the only piece. The other thing was I discovered it. Yeah.
That's the fun part of research, isn't it?
The other thing was the ship on the record in answer, it says departure from, and it said London.
Mm-hmm.
But somewhere else, I know he came from Cove,
Yes.
but this says departure point in London.
Yeah.
I thought that was his departure point.
Yeah. No, the main departure point of the ship.
His departure point.
Yeah, because it would go London Cove, and then
New York, and then Boston.
yeah.
But he's only the two little bits in the middle.
Yeah. Well, sometimes they'd even stop in Queenston and places along the way, so they don't record that. Sometimes they even stopped in Belfast. It's like I found a passenger list on the PRONI website, Public Record Office of Northern Ireland. It was a transcript that they'd put into one of their descriptions, and it was a passenger list, and it had names, and it gave the passengers with two different names, and it was like really weird. How did that happen? Found it on another website that has a lot of passenger lists on it as well. Same thing. Went back into PRONI, it's gone. And then found it again in PRONI, and the two names were the same this time.
Oh, weird.
Yeah. So I don't know for sure until I can find out the original record. Maybe I'll get to PRONI this year. But, things like that, it's the serendipity. So it makes it interesting. Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you very much.
Well, Ruth, 12 of my 16 great-grandparents were Irish born. I don't know if that's a blessing or a curse. I try to take it as a blessing, but it sure makes genealogy interesting.
It does.
I would like to say that every time that I have made an unexpected breakthrough, it was because I followed one of your tips.
Oh, thank you.
And I have this character I've been hunting for quite some time, and everybody's been hunting him for quite some time. And you've given me new ideas, and I thank you so much for those.
Good luck.
Anyway, thank you so much, and
Thank you.
token of our appreciation.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I just want to remind, thank you, Ruth. Just want to remind you that this meeting will be, sorry, Catherine. Just like, yeah, go ahead. You can just stay there. Yeah.
I just want to remind everyone that the Hamilton branch has a sub-branch called the Wise, Welsh, Irish, Scottish, and English. We meet on the third Wednesday of each month.
Fourth.
The fourth. Sorry.
We're the third Thursday.
We meet on the fourth Wednesday of each month and try to help each other with our brick walls on these 4 countries. And anyone who wishes to come would be made most welcome. The office, of course, is open at 6 o'clock for any research that you want to do. And then our meetings usually start at 7, and we try to get speakers of great knowledge, like Christine here on Scotland, and whoever we can get to discuss different subjects. So anyone who would like to come, you're welcome.
Thank you, Catherine.
Thanks, Janice.
Okay, just this meeting is being recorded and will be up on YouTube. So if you want to go back and watch and you know anything that you've missed, more than welcome to go back and check it out. The link will be on our homepage. You'll see it there. Just a reminder, we also have a Facebook page. You can join us there. We are tracking surnames of people that are in the Hamilton Wentworth area. So I am maintaining a database, posted every couple of weeks with an update. So join us on that. The next meeting will actually be streaming live from Salt Lake City. We're going to try something new and funky. So the gentleman will be streaming in here live from Salt Lake and speaking on the Family Search records that from the Family Search website. So you're more than welcome to come here and join us here, or again at home and watch it on YouTube. Just wanted to thank you all for coming tonight. Great turnout. Those online, I think we had 14 at the last count. So we're getting there. Slowly but surely, we're getting there. And we'll keep the research room open till 8:45 if you wanted to stay and do a little bit of research. So thank you very much.
It was very good. Yeah. Great. Very good.